right, guys, here we are back in chapter 5. So Bud has gotten his revenge. He has no idea what he's going to be able to do or where to go or how to get help. So he's talking about here going out and staking out the library and hoping that Miss Hill can help him. So I like this chapter because it gives you a little bit of a glimpse of what life was like with Bud's mama, what his life was like with her growing up, and what kind of person she was as well. And there's a couple things here that you may need clarification on. He says here that he's crouching down, sneaking along the street like Pretty Boy Floyd. Pretty Boy Floyd was the name of an American bank robber in the 30s who was well known. So he's comparing himself to being a really sneaky bank robber like person, right? While he's sneaking around. There's another thing here too that they say, and it's an idiom where he says, I tried tugging at the bars, but they were the real McCoy, solid steel. So the real McCoy is an American idiom that we use to refer to something being real or genuine. It actually goes back, they believe, because there's no definite this is when it started, but there's a famous black inventor in the 1870s who created an engine system that was really good. And so in order for people to not get tricked into getting one that didn't have a system in it, they'd ask if that was the real McCoy, meaning the real McCoy system. And it just became an idiom that got used. And so when you're trying to convince somebody or tell somebody that you're using something that's genuine or real, you would describe it as being the real McCoy. So if somebody brought you, I don't know, a pair of Nike shoes, you could ask, are those a real McCoy or are those real? Are they knockoffs? So the real McCoy is a way of saying that they're real, they're genuine. So that's an idiom. But here is a piece that I just love that explains the title of the name. And also kind of goes back to something that I have a lot of conversations with kids with that I'd like to read to you. So on page 41, it's about halfway down on page 41. She had 4 things to tell me. One of them was about the picture, and another one was about my name. She'd say, Bud is your name, and don't you ever let anyone call you anything outside of that either. She'd tell me, especially don't ever let anyone call you Buddy. I may have some problems, but being stupid isn't one of them. I would have added that DY onto the end of your name if I had intended it to be there. I knew what I was doing. Buddy is a dog's name, or a name that someone's going to use on you if they're false friendly. Your name is Bud, period. I'd say, okay, Mama. And she'd say every single time, and do you know what a bud is? I always answered, yes, Mama, but it was like she didn't hear me. She'd tell me anyway. A bud is a flower to be, a flower in waiting for just the right warmth and care to open up. It's a little fist of love waiting to unfold and be seen by the world. And that's you. And I'd say, yes, Mama. I know she didn't mean anything by naming me after a flower, but it's sure not something and it's something I tell anybody about. So I just love that piece about his name. She was intentional about his name. You guys aren't parents yet, so you don't know this. When you choose your child's name, you go through a lot of thinking about what that name represents for them, what it represents to you, the meaning behind it. Most of us just don't openly random up a book and that's it, picked out your name. There's a lot of give and take and going back and really thinking about your name and what it means about you as a person and how you're going to grow up and how you present yourself to the world. And I have this conversation a lot with kids about correcting adults, especially those really polite kids who don't want to correct adults. But you should be called by your name. And that just doesn't mean by your name. It means the right pronunciation of your name. When your parents chose that name, they also chose how it's supposed to be said. And it's really important that you correct people, even adults, politely, but you correct them about how your name is to be pronounced and said. Because it's a reflection of you. You own very few things in this world when you come out into it, but your name is one of them. And that respect of saying a person's name correctly and pronouncing it correctly and using it how it was meant to be used is actually really important. So I encourage you to always make sure that if somebody is mispronouncing your name, that you politely, but you do correct them and how your name is supposed to be said. And I would be annoying. I would do it every time somebody mispronounces my name. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, you said it wrong. My name is, and then correct them. It's yours and it's a representation of you. And just like Bud's mom, your parents chose your name very intentionally and specifically as well. All right. So go ahead and read chapter 5. I like this chapter because you get a little glimpse of what his life is like. You get to hear a little bit about what he carries around in his suitcase that he always has and how unusual it is that he has a suitcase. Everybody else just has a sack with their stuff in it, right? And we get learn a little bit more about Bud and also kind of find out like where his thinking is. So currently he thinks that maybe a lady at the library is going to be able to help him out. All right, guys. Happy reading.
What are you doing, Mom?
Just looking at you being a goofball.
Hmm.